of shift length. I've got two stories. Jordan, I'm going to ask you to share your story when you brought out the volleyball flip charts, trying to reinforce that when you coach the U18 AA team. But the story that shocked me the most was, I believe it was Sochi Olympics, and Mike Babcock coached. The shift lengths were 30 seconds, and Crosby had some 20-second shifts. And that was probably one of the most dominating team play efforts by our team. Now, I'm not suggesting that, but hockey's not an aerobic game. It's a burst, sprint, coast, adjust your pace game. And if you play longer than 40 seconds, you're going to be tired. You're going to disrupt the chemistry of the other lines. And you're not addressing a cardinal of respecting the team and the ice time that the lines need to play together and the teams need to learn all situations. Now, there is a point, Craig, and you and I sort of butt heads on it. There's a point that you would shorten the bench to win. And myself, I'm more or less the opposite. I just roll the dice and hope it happens. But I found that when I didn't head coach and I let the defenseman coach change the D and the forwards change the D, I just let them do what they wanted, and I looked to see if those star players were going out too soon. Were they heaving? And if they were heaving, I called them back and I explained to the coach looking after that they're too tired to play at their best. Even though playing tired, they can still probably be as good as most players. So, Jordan, you probably accomplished the uh, what you did was an exercise on the bench that I thought it was amazing. But can you share that story of the flip charts and the shift lengths and how it worked for you?
Sure, Wally. Yeah, much like Craig had mentioned, you have players that are at the top end of the skill level, and in many times they get the opportunity just to do whatever the heck they want. And so, in coaching U18 AA, I had lots of kids coming out of U15 that didn't understand what a shift length was, what an appropriate shift length was, and so we tried different things, including the old let's skate for 40 seconds and see how you feel after it in practice and some of those, and it still wasn't sinking in. So it was just by good luck than good management. I was thinking about, well, how can we show it um, visually for the kids on the bench? And I happened to be going through our phys ed storage room at my school, and the volleyball flip chart for flipping the score for when you're playing half court was there, and I grabbed it and took it to the rink, and we stuck it on the bench and did the math of, well, you should have 30 shifts a period. And so every line that went out on the forward side, they would flip one half of it, trying to get to 30, and the D pairings would flip on the other end, and we'd see how close we could get to 30. And it was pretty amazing that after a while, they were really thinking about it. And there was actually a couple of games where, especially second period long change, where we didn't play very well. And all I had to do was send that chart back into the dressing room with them. I'd give it to the last kid going into the room and say, hey, take that in. And so that's sitting in the middle of the floor in the dressing room. And when they're seeing that there's only 20 shifts there, they can start to figure out, well, what's going on? Why are we playing so much slower than the other team? Well, as Craig was saying, we're getting outchanged. And so that was a visual that we used, and I haven't had to use it this year, but it was one that I'd used different times, and it actually worked because it allowed the kids to see you're in it together as a team, and you're not taking ice from your teammates, and when everybody's taking appropriate shift lengths, we're competing a lot better. So it was one of those things that just worked as a visual reminder. The other one was with the Instat piece and taking the calculations of the shifts of players and you take the names off of them and just giving them a chart with the shifts, the total time minus and having them do the math, figuring out what each of the 20 players on the team, what their average shift length was. And then at the end of it, giving them the strip of paper of which kid they were, and them having them to figure it out. And some of them were a little surprised, and especially early on when you do that, and you have some discrepancies early on of some taking longer shifts than others, and understanding that how important it is that we're fresh on the ice. And Craig's used the line before that we change when it's appropriate for the team, not when it's appropriate for you. And I know I'm paraphrasing you a little bit, Craig, but not quite right. But it's the gist of it is the players start to understand that, and we actually practice changing now. It's something that we do, practicing putting pucks deep and one forechecking and the rest changing, and changing the forechecker immediately when it can. So it's that piece of taking advantage of the change.
Wally,
Yes,
just to Jordan and Craig's comments here, I think like change is a part of life, and I think that and you're right. This was the World Cup in 2017 in Toronto, and I did a talk with OK Tire owners and operators in New Orleans, and OK Tire is a Canadian company, and there were 600 of them there, and my talk was going to be on change. And I actually, well, you can appreciate where I would use the hockey platform to talk about change. Hockey is one of the few games that changes on the fly, that's perpetual. A lot of other sports stop, make their change, adjust their plays or whatever. Hockey is one of the few that changes on the fly. I started my presentation with the number 39 on my drop-down screen. And I said, and I just, I asked people, what do you think this is? And nobody had any idea. And I said, this is the average shift length of Sidney Crosby in the final game against Team Europe in the World Cup in Toronto, 39 seconds. And I said, what was most important here was number one, Sidney's status, and number two, his commitment to the team and doing everything he could to give us the best chance to win. And then I said, I started to recognize, that this could be part of my discussion. And so I had World Junior footage from that year. And if you remember, this was in Ostrava, Czech Republic, and Canada won the gold medal, beat the USSR, the Russians in the final, who had beaten Canada, our team, 6-0 earlier in the competition. And so I talked to the coach. He wanted to spend some time. We talked about, practicing the change plays, Jordan, as we do in practice, out changing your opponent. Why we can win. If we win the change game, we can win the game. And the reason we wanted to talk about this is because the Russians, as most opponents do when they hand somebody their lunch and meet them again, have a certain level of confidence, take a little bit for granted, are maybe giving themselves too much credit for being highly skilled, highly talented, et cetera, et cetera. And what we did notice is the Russians took long shifts. And we made it very clear that through the change play, that we would be able to beat the Russians if we changed, within that 35, 40-second mark, pushed the pace. They didn't respect us. They thought their skill was superior. They thought they were a superior team in every way, shape, or form. We built a tournament with the help of Mark Hunter and Dale, putting our team together and putting the right people on the ice. But most important of all was the fact that we had practiced the change play. We recognized pace, pushing the pace through, changing. And I showed the last clip of my presentation was when we scored the go-ahead goal against Russia. It was a change play. Puck went deep, one forechecker, Jordan. Two forwards went off, changed 1D. We pushed the puck back to one of the D in the neutral zone, RD in the neutral zone, so we could complete the change. And then we worked our change play. Bang, bang, breakaway, scored. And the Russians, you could see all 5 of them outside the blue line of their end. They were dead tired. They couldn't catch us. And so I equated that to business. I equated that to, you've got to be prepared to change. You've got to be able to stay ahead of the curve. You've got to be able to push the pace and be a leader. And you've got to be able to sacrifice something in order to make sure that to stay in a position, in the pole position, whether it's in business or hockey, you've got to be prepared to change. And the beauty of hockey is that changing on the fly is incumbent with winning hockey. And out-changing your opponent is incumbent with winning hockey. And if you took someone's number and you put it on a board and you said, this is 39 seconds. This is the average shift length of Sidney Crosby in the final game. If you can find someone, and even if you think back to it, sorry to dominate, if you remember the goal that Mitch Marner set up in Toronto, where he lost his stick, came flying by the bench, the trainer handed him the stick. Mitch Marner went in, made a great pass, scored the goal. The bench, the trainer on the bench was aware. He was part of, that play. He was a part of being alert and ready and prepared to participate in whatever needed to be done in that moment in time. And that's all part of, the impulse and the spontaneity of the game, the strategy behind change plays, the strategy behind being ready on the bench, all of those things, to me, equate to winning hockey. And the fact of the matter is, I really like what Craig and Jordan have shared with us. McKinley, you as well. I just think that, we're as good as we want to be as long as we recognize selfless hockey. Recognize that if we don't know what we're good at, we'll never know what we're good for. But we have to stress being good at playing without the puck. And being able to chronicle that and being able to manage that and being able to applaud that with your great players. With those that come in with sort of a mindset of I'm a go-to person, I'm offensive. Really, at the end of the day, Canada started really winning World Cups with National Hockey League players and World Junior players when the very best players were on the ice, but sacrificed themselves to play with the character required to play without the puck. And that started in 2002 with the National Hockey League and the Olympic Games in Salt Lake City.
Thanks very much, Tom. I